Meet Jeff Barnes. He's a former U.S. Navy submariner, risk management expert.
You have to be an expert at least the vision of your company. You don't have to be an expert at all the things you do in the company, but you have to be the one that's sort of giving everybody where we're going, that path. And I learned early on that I need to learn how to transfer my skills to somebody else so that I can keep moving that expertise upstream and get to be in that leadership role that everybody else was looking for.
In 2018, Jeff became CEO at Angel Investors Network, helping entrepreneurs bring their ideas to market. With a unique background of over $10 million in digital assets and $1 billion in investments. He's a master at scaling companies.
The system that we built for the project management system, the customer onboarding system, the fulfillment system, the service delivery, whatever that is, those need to be streamlined. And now the most important thing is more sales and more marketing so we can keep growing this company. Because now we know how to service the customer properly. And once you get that dialed in, once you get the operation piece dialed in, then it's just a matter of scaling up your marketing and your sales.
Jeff, what we always like to jump into, and that is tell us about yourself.
Tell everybody about myself. All right. So, this is always one of those big questions. It's like, okay, I can go all the way back to the beginning. I was born. No, I won't do that. My journey's been one of those crazy, weird, twisted routes where I ended up in a place I had no idea I was going. And there's a lot of reasons for that, a lot of ways that I ended up here. But the long and short is I wanted to play baseball growing up, and due to injuries in high school, I wasn't able to do that. So I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. Proverbial, not sure what I want to do when I grow up, and ended up joining the military, joined the Navy, and got lucky enough to be tested for my aptitude test. Was able to get into the nuclear power program. That led me into being on a submarine because I didn't want to be on a floating city on a giant target out there in the ocean. So I was really drawn to the submarine life and did that for a number of years. Over time, got really good at, being in charge of divisions and leading things with other individuals and running nuclear power plant, running the steam systems and all of those pieces and parts that go into that, making power, making sure our boat didn't sink, those types of fun things. I was a scuba diver for a while. Left that after 6 years because I became sort of disenfranchised with the military paradigm, if you will, and left that, went into corporate risk management and kept hitting my head against the ceilings, as it were, for years on end there. And after 12 years of doing that and working with really, really big businesses and helping raise a lot of capital for companies because I focused in on innovation and technology and had my own division, I realized that just wasn't for me. And so in 2018, I took the leap, left corporate America, took over a company, Angel Investors Network, as you mentioned, and thought everything was good because at the time I was married, I had 2 kids, I'd helped my ex now set up a business and grow that business to about 7 figures. And it was about that time when I quit. I said, all right, great. We got your business up and running. Now I can kind of go pursue my dreams, being a consultant and helping startups and raising capital and things like this, because I knew it was going to take time to get on my feet. And about 2 months after I left corporate America, we pretty much decided to call it quits. So went through a divorce in 2019 and kind of went through a whole process, personally, emotionally, all of that. And in my journey was able to work with a few great mentors and business partners, and we ended up scaling up an e-commerce business from 0 to $17 million in about 8 months. We were doing about on track to be doing $3 million a month when the rug got pulled out from under us on that one. We can go into that in a little more detail. So I went from making $100,000 to $200,000 a day in revenue to literally overnight having to issue refunds and practically out of business. So there was a lot of learning that went into that. And, again, we can cover all of these things in detail, but all of this was that up and down entrepreneurial journey. Everything's going really well, and then it just falls off the cliff. And okay, I'm climbing myself back out. Everything's working again. We're getting back on top, and then COVID happens. We fall off the cliff again. There's just ongoing ups and downs inside of my journey, but it led me to where I am today, where I help companies with their go-to-market strategies and growth strategies, doing marketing and helping investors invest in and find great deals to put their money into.
Mm. So, as you put it, there's a roller coaster ride right there. That's a
Yeah.
movie right there. And unfortunately, being an entrepreneur, it's not like movies where all of a sudden you flip the script immediately and all of a sudden the sun comes out of the dark clouds right there. Let's go back as far as to a little bit of your background. Can you share with our listeners a bit more about that journey from your time in the Navy as a nuclear power plant operator to your current roles as a business expert? And that is, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you learned along the way?
Yeah, great question. And I'll tell you, it's kind of funny because we learn these lessons, we apply the lessons, and then somewhere along the line we forget some of the lessons, and we have to get knocked around a little bit to come back to basic principles that work in any organization. In the military, we had the acronym for the Navy: never again volunteer yourself, right? Because as soon as you get really really good at something, all of a sudden you're not allowed to do anything else. Like, oh, this is the thing you can do. You're going to be doing that. So one of the things I got really good at was writing quality assurance packages and becoming a quality assurance guru, if you will, or expert on the boat. And I became the assistant quality assurance officer for our entire ship. And my job was reviewing work procedures, work orders, and things like that to make sure that things didn't break when the job got done. So of course, I had to know how to do the jobs. I had to know how to do the work, and then I had to know how to test everything and all that. So you get really good at each of these stages. But then I got really good and specialized in being that quality assurance inspector. And so I was the guy that was really, really good at that thing. But that meant that I was stuck doing that thing for a really long time, and I didn't like it after a while. I liked building the expertise and becoming great at it, but I realized after a while, this was not what I want to do for my entire career. I don't want to sit here and review work packages and then review testing procedures and be called in every hour of the evening and every weekend or holiday to go watch a testing procedure to make sure something gets done. And there were some fun things I did and some really scary things I did, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so one of the lessons I learned in that was that it's not so much about not volunteering yourself and not getting good. I think that everybody they owe it to themselves to become an expert in something if they really want to succeed in life. But then the most important skill once you get to that stage is to pass that information that on to the next person and learn how to teach and empower somebody to do a job that you are an expert at so that you can move on to whatever the next thing is. And in business, and you can see in my book over here, this one actually, All Hands on Deck, I write about this and I talk about moving the expertise upstream. And what I mean by that is that when you are, let's just say you are the new cog in the wheel, so to speak, and you're the newest person inside the organization, you're like at the mouth of the river at the very bottom. You're getting all the sludge and all the others, everything else that's coming down. You get the trickle of water coming to you, and you only have one little thing. And so the current may not be very strong. And so as you're growing in this organization, you're sort of swimming upstream. And the further upstream you get, the more expertise you get, the more experience you get. And you can think of the chairman or the CEO of a company as sort of the headwaters of any sort of river. And in order to get to that level, you have to be an expert at least the vision of your company. You don't have to be an expert at all the things you do in the company, but you have to be the one that's sort of giving everybody where we're going, that path. And I learned early on that I need to learn how to transfer my skills to somebody else so that I could keep moving that expertise upstream and get to be in that leadership role that everybody else was looking for. So that was one really big lesson. I say, sometimes I forget it because every now and then I get stuck doing the thing because I really like doing this one little thing. But I realize, hey, if I'm stuck doing this thing, we can't grow our company. Somebody else needs to be doing this so I can focus on the bigger picture.
Right. And When you're going in to companies, advising them as far as what how to grow their company, is that something that you see a lot of? Sometimes someone get caught or stuck into doing the thing versus delegating or keeping the big picture.
I'd say 99% of the time, yes. That's it's really funny. We've analyzed hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs in our company. And when we look at them, it's pretty clear who's going to succeed and who's not going to succeed. And I hate to say it, but it's really easy for us to figure out the ones that are not going to succeed faster than it is the ones that are going to succeed. And the biggest marker of success for us is not even, is it a great product? Is it a great service? Do you have a great idea? It's none of those things. It's, can you build the best team around you? And can you empower that team to then go forth and do their jobs? And I will tell you that the entrepreneurs that get stuck and they're like, hey, no, I am the best one at doing this thing and no one else can do it better than I can. Those are the people that never really scale a company. They might get to a certain level of success. They might get a 7-figure, even an 8-figure business, but they're never going to get beyond a certain level because if they are the ones that say, I have to do this all the time and I'm the only one that can do this, then they're not empowering anybody else to take on those roles, even a leadership role, to help grow the organization. And so, one of the things that we really try to focus on is how do you shift your attention? If you're the CEO and you're the founder, if you are the business owner and you are trying to scale your company, how do we remove you as the bottleneck in your business? How do I take you out of you doing the day to day work so that you can let other people do that and then help you build your company? And we do this again by building that expertise around you and developing standard operating procedures and then figuring out what it is, what are those seats on the bus that you need to fill? Because most entrepreneurs fill almost every seat on the bus. They're the driver and the kid screaming in the back, right? They're every person on the bus. And at some point, you need to let go of that. And you need to not only be the driver and then step out of being the driver and then own a fleet of buses, right? Like that's really the goal of the CEO or the founder is to get out of the seats on the bus and fill those with more competent people and realize that no one is going to have all the solutions like you do, right? So how do I slowly and methodically replace you in certain areas so that you can drive this bus better and faster and further?
And because in large corporations, as you had mentioned, that's where the big think comes into. But in the beginning, a small entrepreneur may feel, okay, I don't want to give away the wheel because they may not drive where I want it to drive.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with those or mentoring those individuals, what, or let's back it up a little bit. When you started out, as far as making the transition, far as from the Navy into the civilian corporate world, what were some of the things that you had to overcome?
Well, changing from a military mindset to a civilian mindset is really difficult. And I got to say, I still don't think I'm quite there. And that was what, 17 years ago now. So the mindset shift is really big. And I got to tell you, the biggest challenge that I have had in my entire career since being in the Navy is, and it's not even really since being in the Navy, because when I worked in the corporate world, I did have a lot of people that were great employees that worked for me and I could rely on them. One of the biggest challenges of being the entrepreneur is you have this level of expectation of yourself and it's way up here. Sometimes it's like way up there. It's unattainable. And most entrepreneurs can't even satisfy themselves because their level of expectation is so high. And unfortunately, if you don't learn how to moderate that and adjust that, and then you start bringing on employees, and let's face it, when you're broke and you're just getting started, you don't have a bunch of capital, you're not hiring experts, right? You're hiring anybody who will come in and work for whatever you can afford. And sometimes that's for free or for stock options. And if you're really good at selling the vision, you might get some good experts who are going to come in or some advisors who will help out. But you're not necessarily hiring the best, the brightest, the most technically inclined people. And as a result, you have to be even more thorough about training and education and helping them and kind of pulling them along. And that's been one of the biggest challenges I've had, is that I'm so used to working with, CEOs, and in the Navy, we're working with the top 5%. In the submarine community, it's one thing. In the nuclear power, it's another. When you're a diver, like, everything is meticulous and I's dotted, T's crossed. And if you mess up, people die, right? That was the level of expectation we had in the military. And so I've carried that with me. Well, I have to temper that when I'm talking to somebody about how do we write a blog post that's SEO rich, right? And how do we do this with this process, right? I have to really temper my expectations so that I don't scare people away, and I can encourage them to take the reins of their one job and then own that job. And that's a really challenging thing, shift to make, whether you're going from military to corporate or corporate to entrepreneurship, or if you just happen to be an overachiever in the first place, which most entrepreneurs are. Most people don't think that way. Most people want to clock in the morning, do their work while they're there, and know exactly what they need to do, clock out at night and be done. That's what most people want. So managing your own expectations is really important.
Okay. So, but let's go into in your role as an innovation in technology, because that's something that's really influencing the marketplace or really life now. And that is, could you share with us an example of a project where you successfully bridged the gap between the innovation, bringing in new innovation technology, and how it affected or how it merged or integrated with the global marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll go back several years now when the Internet of Things was still relatively new. I mean, it still is very new in the grand scheme of things. But we also had this IIoT, the Industrial Internet of Things, and we were working in this. I was in an insurance company, and we were looking for ways to hedge our losses, right? Mitigate our risk. That's what an insurance company is trying to do: mitigate risk so that we don't have to pay out claims, if at all possible, and that ideally results in lower premiums and all of that. Well, we had these issues where pipes were rupturing in the Northeast every winter. And because these pipes are rupturing, you're having flood losses and property damage and things like that. And most people understood, okay, if I keep my boilers running, then the pipes aren't going to freeze. And so most businesses don't have this problem. Well, guess what? The ones that we found out using, again, data science and just looking into the loss history, we found churches to be a real issue. And the reason why is because churches aren't open 24/7, right? They don't have a boiler running, and they're also nonprofits, and they don't all have a lot of money. But they're also very, very old, and they might have stained glass windows or ancient organs, and the pews are made from this really custom mahogany that the original pastor cut down in the yard. Like, there's a lot of valuable stuff in each of these churches. And so we said, well, what? How about we find a way to alert somebody, if we know they're not going to turn the boilers on and leave them on all the time because it's costing them too much money, then how do we find a way to alert them and let them know that there's a potential problem before the pipes rupture, freeze, and then cause a whole bunch of flood losses? So using these sensors, we put these sensors onto these devices or onto these pipes, and that's great because you could plug the sensor into Wi-Fi at the time, and then that would notify somebody if there was a potentially frozen pipe or about to freeze. Well, that's great, but here we have 250 field inspectors, and we want to make sure that they know about it so that they can alert their local contact if something's happening. So now we take these sensors, we tie them into Wi-Fi or cellular communication, and then we need to bring that into a data hub. Okay, because it's one thing for a thermometer to say, "Hey, it's really cold outside. Go check it out." But we now need to have automations. We need to have technology in place. So we said, put the sensors on the pipe, tie the sensors into a repository or a dashboard or a technology hub that pulls data in from the sensors as well as from NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They're the ones that essentially tell everybody what's happening as far as the weather goes. So we tie it into them. We pulled data down from them. We pulled data from these sensors. So when we found out that it was really cold or going to be really cold, we'd send a preemptive notice to them, say, hey, don't forget, it's going to be very, very cold this week. So even though you may not be open, make sure you turn your boilers on or at least cycle them once or twice a day to make sure that we don't have any freezing in the pipes. So now we got preemptive. And then we said, okay, now let's go ahead and take these and build in stages. So if the temperature gets down here and we still don't have any flow in the pipe's getting cold. Now we need to send an alert back to our tech hub, and our tech hub now sends an alert out to the location as well as our local field inspector. So now our field inspector can drive out there and knock on the door, see if anyone's home. Maybe they're on vacation. Maybe, who knows what's going on. So it was a way to tie all of this together. Well, this was also a cultural shift, right? In the insurance world, you're used to going out there and doing claim adjustments in the event that something fails or breaks. And maybe you have set times during the year that you go out there. So okay, I'm only going to go visit the Methodist church in town ABC once a year. Well, now all of a sudden I'm getting called at a random time to go out there and visit them and make sure something's going on. So we have to train people and adjust the culture, which also meant adjusting the technology. You can't just rely on pen and paper anymore. You need something that's going to notify you real time. So smart devices, tablets, all of this stuff, it all ties together so that your field team is tuned into what the actual challenges are and the problems are. And by implementing this, I think in the first year alone, we mitigated about $1.8 million in losses is what we figured out. And then over the course of a few years, it was in the tens of millions of dollars in savings.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm hearing also, and that is that you started out first with goals. So you had the goal, and that was to help them mitigate their risk and also to save them money in the long term, really, because it was going to pay off first those things that you worked with them in order to implement. But how often do the entrepreneur, because that was one of the things we had with in another conversation, and that was that sometimes people get so hung up on goals that they don't develop the systems. They know the outcome, and that's the goal, but as far as systems, and if you can elaborate a little bit more on what are some of the systems that you found most valuable that you created?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was obviously a corporate example, and we have military examples and things like that. But you always start with the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey principle. You always start with the end in mind because if you don't know where you're going, any route will get you there, right?
Right.
But you want to end up in a meaningful place. So for us, you figure out what the problem is. Like, what's the first problem that you need to solve? And what I find with most entrepreneurs is they start with a solution, right? And we know that saying, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Well, if you start solution focused, then you're just going to say, oh, well, my solution fixes this problem. My solution fixes this problem. My solution handles this. But the thing is with that, you don't really know if it's an actual problem or if you're making it up saying, okay, I know this could be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and force this down someone's throat, right? We don't want that. Instead, what we do is we say, what's the problem I am trying to solve in this business, in this situation? And then we have to come up with a solution from that perspective, right? That's where innovation comes in. We say, okay, so using the insurance example, we're paying a lot of money on claims that could be avoided really easily if people just knew how to do this or knew when to flip the switch so the pipe didn't freeze. Like, that's a really easy problem to understand. And then the solution can be a number of different things, right? It could literally be sending out an email blast or a text message blast anytime the weather gets really low to people in that area. But we found a different solution for it. So again, you have to identify what the problem is first. Once you've identified the problem, then you look at, you're coming from your own paradigm. So somebody else who's a marketer might say, oh, well, the best thing to do is implement an automation system that sends out a text message so people will get the text message because we know it has a 98% open rate or something like that. And so somebody starts from that paradigm. Another person might start from the paradigm of, well, I'm a hardware engineer and I know I can build a technology to make sure that this never happens. So I'd say that the biggest challenge a lot of people have is that they're starting from the solution paradigm rather than the problem paradigm. And then whether it's by committee or as an individual, you figure out what the right approach is to solve the problem. You build the systems around that, right? So going back to the expertise we were talking about, if we know, like, let's just say, for example, I have a client who is working on building a fusion nuclear reactor. And if this happens, then and they're able to get net zero energy, which means the amount of energy that goes in to create the fusion reaction is at least equal to, if not less than, the energy coming out. That's a really big shift in the grand scheme of things. It means that we could have this massive, abundant source of energy that doesn't cost a lot of money, doesn't pollute the environment, all these things, right? Well, the thing is, there's only so many people in the world that can actually build that, right? And if we don't build, if we know the problem is we need cheap, clean source of energy that are abundant around the world. That's the problem we need to solve. They came up with this idea. Well, now we have to build a system or a technology around the expertise. And the expertise in this case is there's only one guy that actually knows how to build this in this company. So everything we do needs to empower that person to do their job more effectively. And this is a problem that I see a lot of people running into, especially as an entrepreneur, is that let's just say that you are that expert. You're like, I'm going to build this thing, or you are the person who's going to build the next generation car or the next generation battery or the next generation Google, whatever that is. Well, whoever's building that, they're the valuable asset in the company, right? And it may not be the CEO or founder. So Elon Musk is not the guy who's designing the rockets that are going up into space, right? So guess what? Every system, every technology that they're building is to empower the people who are creating the technology that's going to succeed in the long run for them so that they can focus on the thing that they do best. All right, this is elevating that expertise, right? We want to make sure that the experts are put on the pedestal. And so the systems we build around that help that happen. So for example, project management software is a great example. If I'm the expert. So, for example, I do a lot of marketing and I understand the marketing technology better than most people out there. Well, that's great. But if I'm also replying to customer service issues, that's not a good use of my time. And so customer service needs to be outsourced to somebody else. If I'm dealing with accounting, also not a good use of my time. We need to find somebody else to do that. So all the systems that we put in place are there to elevate the expert and make sure that that expert can get the job done, because that is the person who is the most important person in the company. Without them, there's no product, there's no solution, there's no sales, there's no investors, there's no nothing, right? So we need to make sure, and we need to make sure that's very, very clear. Now, if you get to it, if you're in a business where it's like, okay, anybody can jump into this expertise role, then you build the systems around sales and marketing, right? Because if you can have a number of different people stepping in because you finally brought the level of expertise down to a human level, a manageable level, right? Like let's just say in the very beginning it was all search engine optimization. Well, if there's only one person in a company that knows how to do search engine optimization, we build everything around that. But then going back to what I was saying earlier, that person now needs to train the next person in line. And now we might have 10 people who are experts at search engine optimization, which means the system that we build for the project management system, the customer onboarding system, the fulfillment system, the service delivery, whatever that is, those need to be streamlined. And now the most important thing is more sales and more marketing so we can keep growing this company. Because now we know how to service the customer properly. And once you get that dialed in, once you get the operation piece dialed in, then it's just a matter of scaling up your marketing and your sales and training the next generation of people that are going to keep coming through and providing those service delivery pieces. So hopefully that answers your question.
Mark, we're going to go into another area right here, and that is before we go into talking more about your role as the CEO of Angel Investors Network, I'd like to touch on you've personally spent over $10 million on digital marketing campaigns and mentored over 1,000 companies. What are some of the most common challenges you've seen in the world of entrepreneurship, and what do you help these companies, or how did you help these companies overcome them?
Yeah. Well, I wish I could say there was one thing that stood out. It's like, okay, I know that this is the one thing I'm going to need to teach every single entrepreneur, but that's just not the case, right? Everybody comes from a different place in life. And I think that if I were to take just a broad brush approach, the number one biggest thing that we see as a mistake is that every entrepreneur or most entrepreneurs come in with that solution mentality. They come in, they said, like something happened to them somewhere along the line. They said, you know what? I'm going to create this really cool technology, this really cool tool, this really cool software because I have this problem. And when you have a problem, if any of us have our own individual problem and we're living with this problem day in and day out, we become intimately familiar with the frustrations and the pain points and the issues of that specific problem. And so when we build our solution, we are also intimately familiar with why it's a great solution. However, the rest of the world doesn't know everything that we went through, right? And so, from a marketing perspective, we talk about the unique value proposition of a product, a service, or a company. We also talk about the unique selling proposition, the unique sales proposition of a product, a service, or a company. And if we can't clearly articulate that, then we really, really struggle in a lot of areas, including raising capital, including generating sales and generating leads and all of that. And so, what we have to do is we're generally spending time helping our clients understand and pull out that problem that they first encountered that led them to creating this product. And that's a really, really difficult thing to do because a lot of them have been living with this idea and this notion of how to fix this problem for so long, they've completely forgotten how they felt in the beginning when they had the problem. And if you can't get to that, why we built this in the first place, then you will never get to being able to help other people. So again, I'm using a really simple example of the search engine optimization, right? Everybody kind of understands that, so I don't need to explain it too much. But in the very beginning, when online advertising came out and you had the Ask Jeeves and the Alta Vistas and you're using your Netscape browser and Yahoo was one of the biggest search engines. What was the problem that everybody was having? They're like, oh yeah, we're really cool. We got a website up, but how do we make money with this website? How do we actually get people to come to our website? And remember, this is before there was Facebook and there was Instagram and all these other social media channels. There was nothing around us. So we had to build websites, and it's like, great, we have a website. Well, how do we get people there? Well, the idea was, oh, let's just put it on our stationery. Let's put it on our business cards and our letterheads, and we'll put it out there. And then we'll do TV ads, and we'll do maybe some radio advertising. We'll drive people there. But then this online advertising world comes out, and we have all these search engines that are coming up. And now it's all of a sudden this thing called search engine optimization. So we could show up in the first result of Google or, again, the Yahoos of the world and all the other ones that have completely fallen by the wayside or been acquired. Well, in order to do that, we needed to now come up with a strategy to develop really great content that would get us to the top. And it's even more challenging now than it was in the very beginning. So if that's the issue that we're dealing with, and we went through this process as the business owner of how do I get people to my website, and now all of a sudden we've kind of figured out, and it's taken us a couple of years or a few years to get there. And I go out and I start telling all these other people, hey, you guys got to do this cool thing called search engine optimization, and it's going to get you more people on your website. Well, people haven't even built a website at this point, right? We're talking years and years ago, and people don't even have a website. So if you were that early adopter or that innovator on the front end, and you were struggling to get to the early majority, the people that still don't have a website in 2005 to 2010, give or take, it's right over their head, right? They don't get it. They don't understand, why do I need that? And then you need to go back to, well, why did I do it in the first place? I didn't just build a website because I wanted a website. I built a website because I wanted traffic, right? Why did I want traffic? Well, I wanted to sell people things. Well, why did I want to sell people things? Well, because I wanted to solve problems for them. Well, what problems were you solving, right? So you're asking, we call it the 5 whys. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you do that, right? And you dive a little bit deeper, and eventually you get to the point of the entrepreneur who created search engine optimization, which I don't know if there's one person who did, but it's like, well, I did this because I was sick and tired of people not knowing how to solve the problem that I can solve for them. And so I had to get really good at writing great content and putting great information out there so they could find me, so they could learn about my solution to their specific problem, so they could buy my product and overcome their problem, right? That's a long-winded explanation as to why do we need to go into the very beginning of why you had the problem, right? Because everybody else doesn't know the journey you just went through over the last few months or last few years even, right? And for some people, it's like 20 years in the making, and they came up with this thing, right? So Henry Ford is really famous, obviously for the car, but one of his famous quotes was, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? Well, that because people didn't have the paradigm he had. And so he had to go back, and how do you explain somebody a horseless carriage? Because it wasn't an automobile yet. How do you explain a horseless carriage to people that don't even know that could even exist? right? So you have to shift your paradigm. The only way you can shift your paradigm is going back to problem focused rather than solution focused.
Right. And that's one of the things that Simon Sinek has,
Mm-hmm.
understanding and finding your why. Why do you
Exactly.
do these things? Now, Jeff, the other role, and that is taking over the role as the CEO at Angel Investors Network, is a big responsibility. Can you tell us about your goals and visions for the network and how you aim to support entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's really two types of early stage business owners. I'm not going to call them entrepreneurs yet, but there's two types. There's the business owner that wants to have a small business, that wants to go and they want to have their main street business. It's the bar, it's the restaurant, it's the chiropractor, the attorney, the dry cleaner. We see them up and down Main Street, and even it could be the coaches and consultants and people that are doing online and maybe don't have a physical presence, and they want to get to what we call a lifestyle business, right? They want to have their lifestyle. They want to have it could even be a 7 or 8 figure company, and that's great. Well, those businesses, the biggest challenge they generally face is just marketing, sales, and streamlining operations. At Angel Investors Network, we focus on the entrepreneur, right? And an entrepreneur is different than a lifestyle business owner in the sense that an entrepreneur is trying to create something that is going to be massively scalable and somebody who is going to have an exit. They're not building this because they want the lifestyle for the rest of their life. They're building something that they want to take to the market in a really big way and eventually exit from. And when you exit from a business that is scalable, of course, we're talking 8, 9, 10 figure valuations on these companies, then you create what we call the torrential downpour economics, right? And my friend Greg actually coined this. It's not trickle down economics; it's torrential downpour. So if we think about Amazon and Jeff Bezos, back in 1994, he's sitting there in his basement coding this stuff out, and now Amazon is a behemoth, right? And it doesn't just sell books. In fact, it barely sells books online compared to everything else it does. But now you have Amazon web servers, right? You have our web services. You have AWS is taking over in a lot of areas, and you could have never pictured that back in 1994, right? That was so far from reality that that could have never happened. But we have all of these things that Amazon does now, and think about all the businesses that it has spun out, all the billionaires and millionaires that it has spun out because now somebody else can become an expert in AWS and simple email service and S3 and all this sort of stuff. And then there's the IoT side, and now there's the AI and the machine learning. Not to mention, somebody can go and start their own e-commerce business and launch it on Amazon, or they can have a fulfillment. So, because of what Jeff Bezos built, how many other people now have jobs or have businesses and have made a lot of money as a result of that? That's torrential downpour economics. Those are the people we focus on at Angel Investors Network. Those are the entrepreneurs that are trying to build something that's really scalable. So, how do we do that? Well, great question, difficult to answer. There's a really simple answer, which is get more investors in front of more entrepreneurs that have great ideas that can scale it up. But of course, it's a lot more than that because we know that not every entrepreneur is going to succeed. Because most entrepreneurs, even though they think their idea is great, they haven't done enough of going back to the why to make it great. And so, even though they might have a really cool product, it's not necessarily scalable or infinitely scalable. And so, we want to help create exponential organizations. And we do that through bringing our investors into the room, looking at the pitches, and potentially investing. And so, we'll syndicate deals, we'll invest together, we'll do direct investments in companies, we'll take board seats, we'll advise people, and so on. And so, we put on these live events. We also do weekly webinars where people can come in, they can pitch for free, and we can give them a little bit of feedback. And then if they're a good fit to come into one of our rooms, we have these events all around the country, and we're going to be chaptering or building out a chapter model. So right now there's a lot of angel groups all over the country, and we're trying to structure this so that they are more cohesive and more consistent. So somebody wants to go raise capital in Salt Lake City, that's great, but then they might want to go raise capital in Tampa, Florida, and then New York City, and then San Francisco, and all of this. And so in order to do that, well, right now it's really difficult. You have to go and apply to each one, and you have to handle that one at a time. Or you have to just go get online, go to LinkedIn, and go email and go to all these different virtual events, as many as you possibly can, and hope that you're going to find people. But what if there was a way that you came in and you said, I'm going to go through this system and I'm going to pitch my idea for free. And then as I get better, I'm going to start coming to an event. And at that event, if I raise a little bit of capital, maybe I can go on to the next event and the next event, and next. And before you know it, I'm ready for a Series A, right? And now I can go and I can get in front of venture capitalists. And because I've been going to all these AIN events at AIN's chapters, Angel Investor Networks, now I have connections to these VCs because our membership is comprised of high net worth individuals, business owners, venture capitalists, private equity partners, hedge fund managers, and all of these people. That's what comprises our investor side. And so the more that we can put people on what we call the road show and go from one place to the next place to the next place, the greater the likelihood is that they're going to succeed, or at least it'll happen early enough in their, if they don't succeed, it's going to happen early enough in their capital raising process that they'll be able to retool it before they spend a lot of money or time invested into this business, right? So for the future of AIN, it's doing more of these events in person. That's the best way to raise capital, is meeting people face to face, getting in with these mastermind groups where you can learn how to adjust your pitch, how to adjust your presentation, or adjust your technology or your product so that it makes more sense. Get the right people on your board so that you can help out. And so that's what we've built up at Angel Investors Network, is this entire community of investors who are invested in helping these next generation of entrepreneurs scale their companies up. And eventually it just helps the entire economy, right? Because every time there's a new Uber or a new Facebook or a new Tesla that comes out, look at all these people that get their jobs, all the vendors and the other stakeholders that can get access to new capital or new jobs as well. So that's what we're trying to build over here at Angel Investors Network.
Okay. And then at the end of the show, we'll leave some information for us how our listeners or viewers can find out more information for us on getting in contact with you or getting information on where the next event is going to be. Now, couldn't help but to notice again, your book, All Hands on Deck. Could you share with us, first of all, what was your driving force of authoring or writing that book?
Yeah. So at the time, I was working in corporate America and I wanted a way out. I was I was traveling 60 to 70 plus thousand miles per year in the air. I was going all over the country and working with teams all over the world. And I was exhausted and I needed a way to get out of that. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to consult and advise companies. That's really what I wanted to do. But I had no idea how to position myself, right? So going back to it, I had to figure out, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Because I had done so many things I didn't really know. And so I'm sitting in this mastermind group and I said, hey guys, I need to get up on the stage. I need to go in this hot seat and I need to ask you guys for help because I really don't know how to position myself. And so I'm getting up on stage and there's, probably about 100 people in the room and they're interviewing me and they said, okay, well, tell us a little bit about your history. I said, okay, well, I started my career running a nuclear power plant on a submarine in the Navy. And they said, stop right there. Like, I haven't even told you anything else I've done. That was a long time ago. They're like, no, that's all we need to know. That's your angle. That's how you start. You start by being the expert and they said, anybody else in here ever been on a submarine? Anybody else in here ever run a nuclear power plant? Anybody else in here even in the military? There's a few people that were veterans there. And because I started with that, they knew the level of dedication I had to have for my career, the kind of training that I had that went into all of this. And so they said, what you need to do is you need to write a book based off of your experience and how that translates into what you want to do in consulting businesses and helping them with their operations. I said, okay, well, I can do that. So that was the impetus. 3 months later, I had the book ready. It was published and we got it onto the bestseller list internationally. So that was how All Hands on Deck came out. Was people said, hey, people need to hear more about your story. If they can hear your story, they'll be much more likely to hire you.
Okay. And your second book?
Yeah, the other one, The Ultimate Guide to Self-Directed Investing and Retirement Planning. That was actually written first. And I wrote that book because in 2009, I was going through my MBA and I met this gentleman. We became partners and we said, all right, we need to go out there. We want to do real estate investing. At the time, the financial markets, the housing market, everything was in the toilet. And we said, hey, this is a great time to buy. You buy when there's blood in the streets. So let's go buy real estate now. But hey, we have this problem. We're broke. We don't have any money. How are we going to do this? And so he said, well, And this was my first foray into raising capital. I said, all right, well, we need to raise capital. Well, who are we going to raise money from? He goes, well, we can just talk to anybody, right? Just talk to anybody, talk to everybody. He was that kind of guy. You go talk to anybody, no problem. That's not most people, and including myself. I'm the engineer. I'm like, I'm not just going to go talk to somebody at the grocery store or at church or whatever. I'm not doing that. That's crazy. Like that's where he found all his money. He was Mormon. He goes to church all the time. He goes, I get all my money from church. Like I'm not going to your church. Sorry, dude. I'm not Mormon. Um, and I said, all right, well, that's not me. But what I do understand is lead generation. I've been studying advertising and marketing for a long time. I said, I understand lead generation. And what can we do? Well, all these people that were coming to us said, yeah, all my money's in my IRA. So I don't know how to invest. I was like, well, I do. And because I learned this stuff and you can self-direct your money if it's in a retirement plan. We showed them how to set it up. So I said, all right, let me write a book about why you would do this, the process, what it looks like, and all of that. And that became the ultimate guide to self-directed investing and retirement planning. And I'd been a financial planner for a little while. I worked in the financial services industry. I had enough background on this. So that's how that book came out. And that became a lead magnet for us to start building our company self directed.
And Jeff, one of the things that you have your MBA, but you also do mentoring for us to young entrepreneurs and other professionals also. So, what are some of the common themes that you find yourself suggesting?
I would say that the number one biggest thing that I tell these people is you've got to be immune to criticism. Um, Being an entrepreneur is lonely, right? It's really tiring. I mean, I'm not a young spring chicken anymore, right? I'm in my 40s, and I've been kicked in the teeth a few times and failed more times than I care to count in my entrepreneurial endeavors. But when I was, 24 years old, it was no big deal to go drinking every weekend, work out, and run marathons, have a job, get married, and still be able to start a business on the side, right? Because you only need a few hours of sleep, and your brain keeps working. And I don't know about you, Greg, but I think that if I went back to when I was 21 and I tried doing that routine ever again, I'd probably die in a week, and I don't want to do that. So it comes down to this ability to persevere in spite of all odds, right? So perseverance is really important. And one of the biggest odds that you're going to contend with is everybody else is not going to be there to support you. In fact, most people will actually vehemently try to keep you from doing what you want to do. They will tell you how silly the idea is. They will try and hold you back. They don't want you to do this. They think that you have a great job right now. And why would you throw this in the trash? Or, all of these different excuses. And so this ability, immunity to criticism is one of those things. And it's the ability to build this thick skin and just let it roll right off, right? Because the longer you spend in this animosity state, I'll call it, where you're frustrated and annoyed by these other people coming in and telling you what you can't do, it's just time and energy taken away from doing the thing that you want to do. So when you are, and I hate to say it, but I'm sometimes the guy that tells somebody, no, that is not a good idea for you. That you should not do that, or that idea that you have is not a good idea. We try to do it in a much more, uplifting way, but sometimes we have to just tell people the way it is, right? Sorry, you're not cut out for this. All right. You want to work from 9 to 5 and you want to get paid $75,000 a year to go start your own business. That's not the way it works, dude. Sorry. Um, but that immunity to criticism, that ability to persevere, those are the two biggest things, because you need to be able to adapt to this lack of support from everybody else. You need to be willing to get rid of all the negative energy that's coming from everybody else. And then you have to be willing to stick to it through thick and thin, through ups and downs, through storm and gale and everything like that, because it's going to happen. And there's only been a couple people in my entire life said, oh, well, I've never failed. Well, the people that have never failed have never really tried, in my opinion. And because as soon as you start putting yourself out there, you're going to fail. You're going to fail in some way, shape, or form. And the only real form of failure is if you stop trying. So we just call these temporary setbacks, right? Fail forward as much as you can, all those types of things. But get used to everybody else ghosting you when you start telling them about your ideas, right? Because they think you're either coming to them for money or they think you're crazy, right? So just get used to that idea, and then persevere no matter what, as long as you believe in yourself.
Hey, Jeff, I know we had said a certain time that we were going to do this because I know you're a very busy man. Jeff, what would you like to leave with our audience?
Well, I would say that, I've done a number of different things in my career, and I've had that nice 6-figure cushy salary with all the benefits and all the travel. And I was, the first class lounges, and I was the guy that was in my 20s and sitting in the first class seating, with all the other folks that had their big gold Rolexes and things like that. And when I had that life, when I had the life where I was, the manager working for somebody else, and I had everything all kind of dialed in, I had the house and the wife and the kids and all this other stuff. From the outside looking in, everybody thought it was just perfect. It was all roses. Jeff's got his stuff together. And I got to tell you, I was falling apart, right? I was miserable. I was upset. I was frustrated. I didn't like the trajectory of my life. I felt like I was under someone's thumb all the time, and it was depressing, to be quite honest. And I think that the biggest challenge that I had was that at the time I was not in a relationship with somebody who supported me. And going back to this entrepreneurship being a lonely journey, if the person you're married to, your life partner, your significant other, whatever you want to call it, is not 100% on board, it's going to be another battle, right? It's not just the battle of trying to go and chase your dreams. It's the battle of justifying your dreams every single day. And since it's unlikely that you're going to replace or exceed your existing income anytime soon if you don't go out and start a new endeavor, then you need somebody in your corner. You absolutely need somebody in your corner when you're doing this. And so, like I said, I went through a divorce. I was miserable. Didn't have fun with it, but highly recommended if you're in a really toxic or a bad relationship that's not helping you and not supporting you in your goals. Like sometimes that's the only way. And I was that guy that said, no, I'm never getting divorced, especially having kids. But I had to, right? Because it was not serving me. And she would say the same thing. It was not serving her either. Much better place now, remarried. And my wife and I are 100% on the same page with, I'd say, almost everything. Not 100% of everything, but when it comes to the entrepreneurial stuff, everything, right? And we support each other. And she's building her business right now as well. So she's going through the same things that I've gone through, and I can be there to support her and vice versa. So I would say if you're an entrepreneur, then you 100% have to find the right tribe of people and have those people in your corner and reach out to them and be vulnerable with them and let them help you. And then if you are that business owner on the far end and you are looking for a way to go to that next level, then my suggestion is you find a way to either exit your current business or get it to the point where somebody else can run it, and then use that money and that time to pour it back into that next generation of entrepreneur. Because I will tell you that most business owners, like most real entrepreneurs, all say, to a T, I haven't found a single person that says, I can't wait to exit my business and go do nothing the rest of my life. Every single one of them says, I can't wait for the next thing. And this is a great way to still use your mind and be active and use your expertise for good, because it can be part of the next thing. And that's a lot of what I like to do.
Okay. And lastly, how can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you, find out more information?
Yeah, the best way is to go to angelinvestorsnetwork.com or angelnetwork.com. We own both. They redirect to the same place. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for help with raising capital or scaling your business, we have a quiz there. They'll help you out with that. And same thing for investors. If you're looking for a way to come to our events and network and do deals together and build a lot of wealth and have a lot of fun doing it, there's links on our website for that as well.
All right. Well, Jeff, I want to say thank you very much for taking this time and sharing that valuable information and your journey along the way as well.
I sure hope so. And I really appreciate it, Greg. It's been great. Had a great conversation with you and hope that we can help a lot of people together.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Your support means the world to us. We'll see you in the next one.